Hey everybody, how you doing today? This is my show, Rock is Saved, but this particular person would definitely argue that rock never needed to be saved. 'Cause he never left, he's always been here. Of course, we're talking about Iggy Pop, and he was born James Newell Osterberg Jr. in 1947. He's an American singer, songwriter, musician, and a record producer and an actor. The godfather of punk. He was the vocalist of the STOOGES, first formed in 1967. The godfather of punk is a description that came much later. Even after the heyday of the scene in the late 70s, people figured it had to start somewhere, so actually the Stooges were simply raw and primitive music, and Iggy put on confrontational performances with occasional self-mutilation. He was the first to popularize the stage dive. He rolled around on broken glass, bare-chested, while singing. And the Stooges had low sales, but some of Iggy's songs have become well known. Search and Destroy, I Want to Be Your Dog, Lust for Life, The Passenger, and Real Wild Child. His only top 40 hit was Candy, a duet with Katy Pearson of the B-52s, but I will not consider Iggy Pop to be a one-hit wonder. That would be wrong. Now, the Stooges album, Raw Power, would influence the Sex Pistols, the Smiths, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Nirvana. Iggy's solo album, The Idiot, has been influential to post-punk acts Depeche Mode, Nine Inch Nails, and Joy Division. The Stooges were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010. Muskegon, Michigan was Iggy's birthplace. Did I say Muskegon? I think it's actually pronounced Muskegon. Muskegon, Michigan. His dad was an English teacher and baseball coach, and Iggy was raised in a trailer park. Iggy says his parents were excellent. He was always respected, and he's always loved his parents. They even gave him their bedroom to play his drums. Yep, Iggy started as a drummer, but I'm not going to include him on For Drummers Only, because that would be wrong. He was a drummer in the Iguanas, a band of high schoolers in Ann Arbor. The cut recordings of Bo Diddley covers Iggy was from his time in the Iguanas. You see how that works? Iggy, Iguana? Yeah. Iggy dropped out of the University of Michigan to play drums in Chicago with blues bands. Blues went psychedelic, and so did Iggy. He also moved to the front of his band with Ron Ashton on guitar, Scott Ashton on drums, and Dave Alexander on bass. Their first gig was a Halloween show at a house party in Detroit. Members of the MC5 were in attendance. Iggy says his early stage persona was altered after he saw Jim Morrison of the Doors, Mick Jagger, and James Brown. Also can be given credit. Excusez-moi. I gotta get over this. I'm so fucked up. Okay. In 1968, a year after their debut as the Psychedelic Stooges, signed with Elektra. It's the Doors label. Mo Howard was consulted to see if it was okay to call their band the Stooges, he told them fine, just not the Three Stooges. First album, The Stooges, Iggy is credited as Iggy Stooge and was produced by John Cale. Both it and its follow-up, Funhouse, sold poorly. Elektra bailed and Iggy got into heroin. In 1971, Iggy met David Bowie at Max's Kansas City in New York. Bowie decided to produce an album with him in England. With Bowie on board, Iggy would get a huge push on his career, but drug abuse would slow it down. The Stooges did not survive after their album Raw Power was released. Iggy checked himself into a mental institution to kick his heroin addiction, and Bowie visited. When he was clean, Bowie took him along on his station-to-station tour. This was Iggy's first exposure to shows on a large scale. Bowie impressed Iggy with his work ethic. Bowie and Iggy Pop relocated to West Berlin to continue to kick drugs. Yes, they were both addicts, and not just to smack. Coke was big in the 70s, especially with rock royalty. In 1977, Iggy Pop signed with RCA, and Bowie helped write and produce The Idiot and Lust for Life, Iggy's two best albums. Also in the studio were Hunt and Tony Sales, sons of comedian Soupy Sales. David Bowie played keyboards on Iggy's tour, and Iggy sang backup on Bowie's album Low. In 1979, Pop moved to Arista, put out a new solo album, New Values. The Stooges were back. The album was more guitar-driven than the RCA albums, but it didn't help sales. It has since been highly regarded by critics. It was a moderate success in Australia and New Zealand. Pop went there for the first time to support the album, and his behavior there resorted to his early Stooge days, and it worked. He was more popular than ever there. This did not translate to US and UK, and Arista dropped Iggy Pop. Well, all I have left here is, let's see, I can't turn the page. There it is. In 1980, autobiography, I Need More, featured a foreword by Andy Warhol, who turns out was a fan. And then David Bowie covered Pop's China Girl, which became a hit as part of Bowie's Let's Dance album. This and more songs co-written with Bowie would serve to make Pop financially stable, and Pop took a long break to kick heroin again, and he also took acting lessons. Pop joined with Steve Jones, the Sex Pistols, and Nigel Harrison and Clem Burke on the title song of the film Repo Man in 1984. The next year, Pop recorded some demos with Jones. The result was 1986's new wave influenced album Blah Blah Blah. Real Wild Child was covered of The Wild One by Johnny O'Keefe. In 1958, the single was a top 10 in the UK. Blah was Pop's highest charting album in the United States since The Idiot. In 1993, Pop appeared on Buckethead's album Giant Robot. In 1996, Lust for Life was featured in the film Trainspotting. A new video was made for the song. In 1998, Pop appeared on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He played a Vorta on the episode The Magnificent Ferengi. Star Trek fans out there. In 2003, the Stooges reformed again, and the album Skull Ring was the result. Also that year, a full-length biography, Gimme Danger, story of Iggy Pop. That's a must-read. Thanks everybody for being with me. It's 2019, soon to be 2020. Iggy Pop is 72, soon to be 73. Just pointing that out. See you next time. Be well.